Okay. Any apologies?
Just apologies from Councillor Turner this evening.
Okay, thanks. And he did send all of us an email because I shared with him my comments on the papers, for which many thanks. And any declarations of interest? No, I assume not. Okay, thanks very much. Let's just plough into it. You gather I've got to leave to go to the new theatre where about 60 people are in the party that I organised, and I need to vouch for them if they lose their tickets. So that's why I need to be there. I don't know. Let's start on and I don't have the agenda. This screen, I'm lucky. This is my own laptop where I can at least see you all. On the other one, I've just opened the email with my notes. This is on the integrated performance report. I can see it is. I see. Sorry. Did you want to say anything else, or it was just to tell me it's live streaming?
No, just wanted to check if you've not got the agenda in front of you. Do you want me to let you know the next couple of items so you can whiz through those?
Right, tell me then. Yes.
Yeah, so we've got chair's announcements. Have you got any?
No, I don't.
No. Okay. And then the next one is, can the panel agree the notes of the previous meeting?
I agree. Actually, I had one question, which comes, I think it's at the end of my notes. Sorry, I put it somewhere. I had one question, which was, oh yes, this is about, I don't know if the rest of you agree. Do you remember we did have a discussion in the original budget papers? It said raise the garage rents by 7%. In the end, the HRA, the council housing, went up by 7.7, and it said that someone agreed anyhow, that it should stay at 7% because the increase in garage charges wasn't significant at around 7,000 a year. And I just made the point, and I'm sure we discussed this, that as is the case with council tax, if you don't raise by the maximum permitted, it lowers the reference for all future years. So it's not just 7,300, but it goes on, other things being equal at that rate. So I thought we didn't go along with that. That was really my main comment on the notes. But that was in the minutes or the notes, paragraph 38. I don't know if my recollection's the same as Chris and Hosnier. Is it the same as yours?
I think so, but Nigel's memory might be better than ours.
Yeah, I can't 100% say yes to that.
What we agreed, James, was that we would put it up in line with the rents, basically.
Oh, we did.
7.7. Well, I say that's what was agreed by cabinet.
That's great. It's not in the notes. That was all. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, it was agreed by cabinet to put it up by 7.7 in line with the rent increase.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much. Okay. So otherwise, no comments on that. Okay, Alice, next item, please.
So it's the Finance and Performance Panel work plan. So given it's the last meeting, the panel's just asked to note it because there's nothing going beyond April.
Okay, come to a dead end. All right, well, that seems obvious. Thank you. And then what next?
And then you've got report back on recommendation. So just noting Cabinet's responses to the recommendations on the corporate KPI review, which are included in the agenda pack.
Is that where they didn't actually put yes, no, partly? And I don't know why, but apparently that's their prerogative, is it not? I mean, they should at least have had the courtesy of responding, but that's fine. And so anything else? No? Okay, let's move on. Next one.
And then it's the Integrated Performance Report, Q3 report.
Thank you. You haven't had the privilege of seeing mine yet, but I had one or two questions, but I will ask. I've got something on paragraph 3 on HRA. I don't know. Do either of you? Are there still only 2 panel members still with us? Yeah. Or
We've
has
got Councillor Smoten now as well.
Okay, good. Does anyone have anything in paragraphs 1 or 2? I've just made a note, HRA paragraph 3. May I make that point? The question was, there's the unplanned expenditure on repairs and maintenance currently charged to revenue, and clearly some will be capitalized. I don't know what the limits are, but what will be the impact on the HRA budget? That's for you, I think, Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, clearly if it meets the requirement of capital expenditure, then we can capitalize it. The impact would be that you would take it out of revenue, basically, charge it to capital, and then fund it by borrowing or grants and the like. Actually, so the impact would be to reduce the overspend situation.
Yeah.
In fact, obviously, this is the end of December quarter, and we have moved on, and by various underspends, it looks like that we will be able to do that to most, if not all, the expenditure actually. So we might well get to a nil position by the year end, but bearing in mind this was forecast as at the end of December. Yeah. So it will improve the position if we can capitalise. It will improve the position on HRA. That's the headline.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from panel members? I don't see any. Okay, then on paragraph 4, there was significant slippage, as there often is, in Q3. And I just wonder, we do have the optimism bias in our medium-term plan, and it's now set at 40% across the board. I just wonder, can we factor in slippage in future? I mean, given that we are allowing for the optimism bias, is that in a sense picked up in the slippage? Are we doing better than the 40%? Because it doesn't look good to have permanent slippage, that's all.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because, as you say, we put 40% optimism bias in the budget for in the next medium-term financial plan, actually. So, in effect, that is trying to allow for the slippage. Optimism bias is a recognised term, and it's recognised by the Capital Green Book, basically. And basically what it's saying, it's the over-optimism of project managers to say what they're going to deliver. So that's why we used it. But that is akin to slippage sort of thing. But what we're doing is reducing the budget in the from the beginning. So although project managers have work with a higher budget, we know that we will unlikely to spend the whole of the capital program. In fact, if you look at this year's capital program, again, we'll be 50% if that basically spend against the original budget. So that 40% optimism bias we put in basically does allow for the slippage. I always find it a little bit counterintuitive that a project manager gives me the figures, and effectively what I'm saying is that I don't believe you, basically. I'm going to reduce your budget by 40%. That always seems a little bit counterintuitive because at the end of the day, they're the expert, not me, basically. But the figures speak for themselves, and we've hit 40 to 50% of our capital program every year for the last 3 or 4 years.
May I make a recommendation? Because we always report slippage.
Yeah.
And could I make a recommendation that we compare this with the optimism bias that was assumed in our medium-term financial plan, i.e. the 40% at present? So at least to know whether we were being realistic in our budget projections. I mean, we don't have to attribute it to a specific project, but just the overall slippage, because it never looks good. It would be, I mean, I'm going to suggest that we then compare the actual slippage percentage with what was implied by the medium-term financial plan.
Yeah, we can do that.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Because otherwise we just have permanent slippage going on and it looks bad. Any other comments from panel members? I'm looking for any hands. I can't see any. Okay.
On the same topic of the slippage, I note that whenever there is slippage, we get corresponding positive variance on revenue, because obviously you're borrowing less, you're bearing less cost of borrowing, etc. To what degree do we ever actually do that deliberately in order to improve the position on the revenue budget? Are we sort of, soft pedaling a little bit, slipping things backwards a little bit so as to spare the revenue position, or is it genuinely unintentional slippage in all instances?
Yeah, it's probably a more unintentional actually. It's an interesting one because it does depend on what is being slipped. If we slip the if the housing development program slips, then housing development company take less borrowing off the city council. The city council gets less margin basically because obviously we put a margin on top of the interest basically that we charge, and therefore we lose out. If it's other parts of the program, then as you say, it's more favourable. If we slip on not to be emotive, but say East Oxford Community Centre by £4 or £5 million, you get a positive variance because you're borrowing to fund that scheme basically, and you've not borrowed basically. Therefore, your interest goes down. So it does depend on what is being slipped actually, and where as to whether that has a negative or a positive variable on the outturn actually. But it's not intentional basically that we build that in actually.
So one example where there was a deliberate postponement was Cave Street. Would you write that down as slippage, or would you call that something different because it's because it is an intentional postponement?
Yeah, I wouldn't call that slippage because what we did is I mean there are various reasons why we didn't get to start the scheme around grants and various other reasons as well. We were trying to get the cost down as low as we can. But at the end of the day, we took a positive, proactive decision to say, it's just not going to work, basically. Interest rates have gone up so much, basically, that this does not work as a business case. So we basically took it out of the programme. I don't determine that as slippage. I think that is positive action, basically, to say this scheme doesn't work. Why would you do it, sort of thing.
Okay, right. But that is currently sitting not in the programme at all, as opposed to being pushed back 2 years on speculation that probably conditions will be more normal.
Yes,
because
that's right.
In general they are.
Yeah, it's been taken out of the program at the moment actually. And I know we're looking at possibly doing other things, so not the original project. So we're looking at possibly use for temporary accommodation, etc. Modular build potentially, but that's not come forward yet, and is a way off of being costed up.
Thank you. Actually, I should ask Amir and Hosni, when do you want to break yourselves for iftar? So
I've got everything ready here, so I'm gonna turn my video off and eat and listen, because I'm then having to go to Blackburn East Parish Council. The fun never ends.
Okay.
But I don't know, I might be. Yeah.
Okay. All right. No, I just wondered. Okay. Anything else on this paragraph 4, which is really about the slippage? Otherwise, in terms of paragraph 5 on performance, or maybe prompted by Alice, had a question. I mean, why do 4 of the indicators have no data? Are the wrong things being measured? I mean, what's going on there? Does anyone know? Would you know, Nigel?
No, I did have a look at them actually, and unfortunately the data just hasn't been provided. I think you also allude to whether we are reviewing these, and you're right, we are reviewing all the KPIs, and there will be a different set coming forward, from April 24 onwards actually. But I'm not sure, if I'm being honest. I think probably need to take that away. As to why they're not provided. To say under review, and then there are a number that are just not being provided actually.
Yeah, I know. So I think they're in transition. Okay. Anything on paragraph 6 or 7? I don't have any questions.
So I had one question which we may have gone past. I'm not completely sure. Your system was one of the general fund revenue pressures that was described was about unbudgeted maternity. And I just wondered what is the approach normally taken? Are we sort of essentially budgeting nothing, and sometimes it happens, and that's always an unbudgeted excursion, or do we assume some standard level, and it just turns out that that there's more than expected this year?
Yeah, I think that's specifically referring to the contact center actually, and we were hit with a perfect storm of maternity cover or people leaving for maternity, plus illnesses and people leaving as well actually. But we don't generally budget for maternity. I mean, it's not how long's a piece of string, I suppose, would be the concept actually. So when we do get cases of maternity, invariably they are backfilled when we have a budget overspend actually. With a team as big as the contact center, which is about 57 strong, it is expected that there is some sort of pickup of those cases that they can run without, say, one person, two people possibly. But certainly I know in the contact center they've had I don't know how many, but there have been a number basically, let's say that, of people that have either gone off maternity or have become ill or whatever basically, and we've had to backfill basically. There's just been no choice, so hence why the overspend in that particular area.
Okay. I mean, do you have a recommendation, Chris, about how one might project maternity leave?
I assume there's some sort of standard for budgeting in these circumstances, but obviously I don't know what it is. I'm not the expert. I just wondered whether we always assumed some, or whether it always just shows up as an unbudgeted expense.
Okay. Coming on my list to paragraph 8, it mentions how St Aldate's Chambers and Cadogan House, which I now discover is in Wheatley, they are now occupied. I just wondered, it implies there was something about income. Is the income flowing from both, or is there a grace period?
There is a grace period that they have been let. The let is for a period of 12 months off the top of my head. There is a grace period, and obviously it does affect the budget because we'd assumed that income at least 12 months ago, actually, when we first purchased the building. So we have a budget pressure, but the building is now let on the positive side. And certainly for the next 12 months of the period of let, basically, we will get something in, basically, which will be more akin to what we budgeted for in the base budget.
Okay, thanks. It talks about a fusion saving. I'm not sure what is the fusion saving. I didn't think there were any savings with fusion.
Yeah, I think it's probably narrated. To be fair, the saving was more around the energy costs, basically, in connection with the fusion contract, actually, where we budgeted for a higher energy bill. And they're coming in slightly below. I wouldn't say materially. I mean, the increase we had to input in was about 1.2 million, but they are coming in slightly less than that forecast. But it's probably misnarrated in terms of its energy bills in respect of the fusion contract, i.e., the leisure centres.
Okay, thank you. And the last one, which I had, and then I can invite panel members, business improvement pressure. It implies there is one, which I can understand. And the question is this resolved? And more to the point, will it carry forward into the future years?
Yeah, we're hoping it won't carry forward into I'd say April. That's a few days away, actually. We still have some pressure, so some may, but what we're putting in place is a number of sort of changes. So we've ramped up the number of forms basically that can be accessed online. About 50 or so forms have been put into use. We're about to sort of push the button on a sort of comms campaign of rollout of that, actually. We've introduced a portal basically, or it's currently in testing through the QL system, the tenants portal, to allow people to self-serve online basically, and is also a portal for revs and benefits as well. So these are all the measures basically that we're trying to put in place, or go almost at the point of go live, that will hopefully reduce the calls going into the contact center and mitigate that pressure. I do expect some pressure, if I'm being honest, because these are early days on those initiatives actually. So some pressure will carry forward, but hopefully it won't be of the magnitude that there currently is.
Okay. I mean, I always fear there's some underlying optimism bias, and it sounds as if when things start, you should allow in some formal manner for failure to achieve everything from day one, but
Yeah.
that's as may be. Are there any other questions from the rest of you on paragraph 8 or paragraph 9? I have nothing. On paragraph 10, and it does seem an important point to me, I'm just pick out the delay in letting out 1 to 3 George Street. Now, this has been down on the list for a long time, and I'm putting, shouldn't we factor in delays in lettings as a matter of course, since they seem perennial? It's a different kind of slippage. It's a slippage on the revenue front, but we are in danger of permanent optimism bias, no?
Well, again, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I'm reliant on the professionals, in this case, the property team, telling me when they're going to let a building and what they estimate they will let that out. And if they continually slip, it's difficult for me to say, well, let's if you tell me you're going to let it in 2 months, let's assume you're going to let it in 10 months, and then if you do it in 2, then I'll get 8 months uplift. So, yeah, I mean, I could do it that way round, but again, I'm running up against the professionals that say, no, I'm telling you, I'm going to do it in 2 months, and why would you budget any differently? That's the problem I've got. So I think your point is well made, James, but it's really difficult for me to be saying against the professionals.
May I make a recommendation? There are not that many of these large projects. Some of them, which I know are different, like I went to visit the Store Hotel, and they were just held up because the wretched utilities, they couldn't get the electricity connection for many months. I mean, that's another kind of slippage. But it would be very nice if someone could prepare a simple analysis, only choose bigger projects, but to see what was implied by Jane Winfield and her team, and what was the actual outcome. And St Aldate's Chambers, I know it was a special case, but Cadogan House, all of these things, and we're living a little bit in fantasy land. It would be nice to know, and then to challenge them with it, and to ask, is there any reason why they're going to do better in future?
I think it's a reasonable challenge. Personally, if I'm outside looking in, James, I think it's a reasonable challenge given some of the higher profile properties that you named that we haven't quite got out the door, actually.
Yeah. I mean, James is still looking as if the ODS is having fun building it. Okay. Could we maybe have that as a recommendation? Yes, Amir. Your hand is up, I assume.
Sorry, I think it's an error.
Okay. Well, I thought you were waving. Okay, are there any questions? I don't have anything until paragraph 18 on corporate risk. Does anyone have anything on? I'm sorry, I'm just going because I've only written my notes here. I can't see the whole papers. I can't get ModGov here in the members' room. So I don't know what's paragraph 11 or 12 or 13, anything between 10 and 18. If not, I'll jump to paragraph 18, which is corporate risk. If you remember, I'm sure we've discussed this quite a lot. They split out, bless you, they split out the 2 climate change red risks. And I honestly don't know why they are separated. I know they are, when you look at it, slightly different. But honestly, I would just put them in as one. They're all around climate change. And some of the other risks are more global. I'm sure we've made that recommendation before, and I don't know why it's not been taken on board.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, again, we're reliant on the officers, in this case, David Butler, basically, to be advising, what he sees as the risks. And I can make the comment again to him, basically, that should these be merged? Yeah. I think that's what I can do actually.
And it reduce the number of red risks.
It will. It will. Yeah. Yeah.
Does anyone disagree? I just honestly don't see. I mean, it comes up a bit later when there's the one with community services under service risks about the Hinksey pool. I feel that's terribly parochial. I mean, it may matter a lot to people who use it, but it's not a risk in the ways the other ones are much more fundamental risks. No?
I mean, Peter maybe had a comment around Hinksey Pool, possibly not. But I think that is a risk. You're on mute, Peter. But I mean, that is a risk.
No, I would put it as amber. That's all. It's not red. I mean, otherwise, loads of more things should be red once we focus on specific projects. My view.
I had one other on risk, which is you mentioned increased risk of procurement challenge.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could elaborate what's caused the increased risk. Are you just thinking of the fact that we're embarking on things like the leisure contract, where that's obviously a big deal, or is there something intrinsic to the council as well that's changed there?
Yeah, I don't think it's something intrinsic to the council. It's something that we've noticed of late. We've had 2 recent challenges basically on procurements, and I think that's just a sign of the times that, you know, if they are close in terms of the evaluation, contractors or bidders basically just saying, well, I think I'm going to put a challenge in. So on 2 occasions, we've had to go through the evaluation again, basically get it rescored, and then in both cases we've rebutted the challenges and confirm the original valuation. But I just think it's a sign of the times that, you know, it'd probably be unheard of years ago that challenges, but we've had 2 in the last 6 months. We've had 2, and at least a query on, you could say, on the obviously on the leisure one as well, sort of thing, you know. So it's a sign of the times basically where, you know, people are scrabbling for contracts basically, and if they're very close basically, then they're going to put a challenge in.
Can you say what we were challenged on, or is that commercially confidential?
I think it's good. Well, I think in terms of the one, it was basically just on the scoring. I'm challenging you on the evaluation. I want you to look at your evaluation again, basically, and confirm to me that you're going to confirm the scoring, basically. So it was just on that, and that's what we did, and that's where we went back. It wasn't specific.
Right. Is there anything we can do, knowing that people are coming at us more like that, or is it very much just it's a risk, but it's not really a risk that we can ameliorate?
Yeah, I think the latter. I don't think. I mean, we do ameliorate it by obviously further training. The contract procurement rules are changing basically with effect from the 1st of October this year, and there's a whole new raft of requirements basically that will be required for contract managers going forward. We'll have to ramp up the training in terms of that. So there will be changes coming forward, and we'll just have to meet those changes, make sure managers are fully trained to deal with them, and basically undertake the procurements and the evaluation of the procurements with due diligence. And that's all we can do, I think, actually.
Again, should we allow for a bit of slippage as a matter of course, on average? I know not for individual contracts, but just in terms of trying to project. Would that be possible, in your opinion, to make? Because it does presumably delay things somewhat.
Yeah, delays because you can't appoint. You go into a standstill, and obviously they're challenging during the standstill.
Yeah,
and you can't do anything basically until you've and then, you know, if they wanted to, they could, if they thought it worthwhile, they could then take it further basically. We've been able. I mean, obviously we build standstill in basically, so that's built in. We don't build in anything beyond that basically, because we would like to think our procedures are robust enough that we could rebuff any challenge that we get.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure building in something on that would be appropriate, but yeah.
Okay, Chris Jarvis, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to follow on to, I guess, the other Chris's initial question, and you say, Nigel, that it's a sign of the times. I wonder just if there's any other, I guess, patterns in relation to the challenges, you know, around whether it's particularly large contracts, particular services, etc., that is useful for the council to be aware of in its procurement going forward?
I didn't see any pattern. I think off the top of my head, one was a housing contract, and one was a furniture contract, I think, actually. So I don't see any pattern there, basically. As I say, I just think it was, if you come second in a race, then and you're aware, because we obviously you publish the scores, sort of thing. If you're fairly close, you're gonna say, well, I want that challenge, sort of thing. I want you to have another look at it. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they do get rescored, not in the council, I would add, but in others they have been. I mean, and I think we do need to tread carefully. There are some fairly high-profile cases of challenges which have cost the local authority many hundreds of thousands, and so we do need to tread carefully. But we'd like to think that we've got that due diligence, although we're going to need to ramp it up with the changes coming along, as I say.
I know I'm chairing a meeting right now online, and I'm going out this evening. Can we do it maybe tomorrow morning or something?
James, you'll just have to unmute yourself because I muted you for the live stream.
Thank you very much. Suddenly I couldn't stop that one, and I needed to answer it. Okay. There was also the workforce sustainability risk. It talks about mitigations. What's actually being done as mitigation? It says potential mitigations.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose this is wrapped around all the sort of stuff we're doing around pay at the moment, actually. Obviously, we've agreed the pay settlements, but we are doing pay benchmarking with other local authorities. We do quite a bit of work in the space of sickness and ill health, actually. Certainly, CMT focuses on the sickness rates across the authority, and those that seem above average, basically, are required to visit CMT to explain what they are doing within their services. And I know that because mine is one of them. Certainly, financial services is out in the lead for once, in a place that I don't want to be, basically. I don't want to be out in the lead, but we are way out, basically, and we've had some very long-term, quite a large number of long-term illnesses, actually, with this affecting the financial services. But yeah, we do things like that, and then there's a lot of well-being stuff. Obviously, all the stuff around the surveys we do with staff, etc. To find out what take pulse, basically, of what's happening in the authority. So it's a whole raft of things, really. It's not just one thing, basically. Yeah, that's it. It is nevertheless there, because I know, again, I speak from financial services, to try and get somebody in to come to cover as a temp or even a permanent is really difficult. And other services get the same. I know property have had problems, planning have problems, building control. So we're not alone in this, basically, but we try and do as much as we can, actually.
Okay. And then on housing services, what is it? It talks about the transformation programme. What is the timescale? What's the plan for that?
It's a pity Peter's gone, actually, because this is his area.
We can come back to that when he returns.
Yeah. I mean, I to be fair, I did get something from Richard Wood, actually. So this is about obviously the alliance, basically the county-wide alliance with the districts and the county council. And one thing Neris was saying to me, actually, is that it's proving really difficult to sort of keep that going, actually, in times of where we're all trying to cut back our budgets, actually. And whilst we've got it over the line for this year, I think next year's discussion may be a little more difficult. And here's Peter, basically, in terms of, perhaps he can chip in, actually. It's the transformation for the alliance, Peter, and the sort of timeline when that would happen.
You're muted.
Apologies, my door just knocked. Which alliance, Nigel? I was following, and I may have lost your thread.
Yeah, so it's the homelessness. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's the question?
What's the timescale? You talk about transformation program. What's the timeline? What's expected projection?
So if we're talking about the housing services transformation,
No,
Yeah.
the adults homeless pathway. It is, Peter.
oh, well, that's in progress. I'm not sure I can give you that timescale now, James, but I can speak to Neris to get something back to you.
Okay, and for the panel members, that would be good.
Yeah.
IRS, yeah. Okay, thanks. Any other things on the corporate risks? This has gone up to paragraph 20. And then we come on the corporate KPIs appendix. I have a question which I always have, and I still don't know precisely the answer. There's a column called December 2023. Is this December? Is this Q3? Is this Q1 to Q3? I think someone should say, because it just says December. And I just wish it was clear what on earth it is that we're talking about. Because some of the numbers, when you dig into them, I said, if you look at BIC 018, I tried to make sense of the numbers in it. I mean, I'm just giving that as an example. Is it a projection for the year as a whole? I really don't know. It would just be nice to be clear. You could have a note about what the columns represent.
Yeah. I think we could improve on that. I think there seem like, I would say by and large they're a year to date. I mean, if I look at the ones in my area, they're year to date basically. So spend with ODS and SMEs, etc., and spend with local businesses, they're year to date, and the income collection targets are year to date as well. But I think we could make it clear, as you say, basically, because it's not clear whether some of those are just for December or whether they are, as I say, year to date.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have also a target for the whole year. Yeah.
The year end target is the whole year, absolutely.
Okay. And that's not adjusted in the light of actual reality.
No.
Okay. There are specific questions about one or two. Some of them don't seem to make sense. You know, there's one which is talking of jobs created and jobs saved. And why can't they separate that? It seems slightly odd. And then they add together Oxford Living Wage, employers and employees. Well, one employer is one employer, and they may have loads of employees. It just sounds slightly odd, you know, apples and oranges. So there's specifics about them. I'm not sure, but I know they're being reviewed. I think they do need to be reviewed.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think you will see a different set of indicators basically in the next monthly report.
Okay. Does anyone? I'm jumping through this. Does anyone have anything else on those KPIs in the appendix? I think probably we should take it as something it's not worth spending much time on because it's all going to change.
I've got a suggested measurement, perhaps not a recurring KPI, maybe actually a recurring one for a short time. It's informed a bit by, there's a particular case I'm familiar with where a person is very much rattling around the temporary accommodation system, going back and forth from hotel to one form of TA, which then becomes intolerable, and back in a hotel and placed again and back in a hotel, yada yada, and it's going on like that. And I'd like to know how common that is. So I don't think you can actually indicate this as a number. I think what it actually demands is a small histogram, if you'll suffer the complexity. Basically, we know from the measure there that we've got 192 people at that point in time in TA of one sort. But I would like to know that of that, this many people have been in TA for 3 months or less. This many people have been in TA for 3 to 6 months. This many people from 6 to 9 months, ... until you run out of people.
Yep. Well, we will have that data because we will register the individual or the client at the point that they present themselves to the council. So we will know the point at which they are placed in TA. So we can tell you their longevity, which becomes a factor in their allocation. So we will be able to say that.
Can we request that is brought back at an appropriate meeting to see that profile, or maybe just follow up by email to the panel with that breakdown? That'd be informative.
Okay, so that's a breakdown of the timescales of the 192 people in TA.
Yeah, people in TA,
yeah,
bucketed by number of quarters or number of months that they have been in TA.
Yeah, I'll get that arranged.
Thank you.
Any other queries? In the note which can be circulated, I mentioned one or two others, but they are not, I think, worth taking all your time. If not, I think the most important things actually are what we're now coming to, which is the draft terms of reference for the two strategic reviews, one for community services and one for ODS. I'm not quite sure what the best way is to proceed. Alice.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, you just missed the scrutiny performance monitoring item. I don't know whether the panel want to say too much on it, because obviously there's the KPIs in the other report, but that's just the item in between. And then we'll need to go into private session for the other two.
Okay. No? May I suggest that we go to private session? Thanks.
I mistook it for more KPI.